So today, the 15th of September, I happened to be doing some grocery shopping and I came upon some products. I'm quite happy to see this product. They were advertising it on Friday in the newspaper. The bread that's being produced by Namib Mills, by Bake Pro, which was all over the newspaper, and they were dishing out free loaves. You can get this at your local retailer. I think it's only in Woermann and Brock. I went to Spar to see if I could get it, but I couldn't get it, so I found it in Woermann and Brock. So then, as I said, in the local retailer where I was doing some shopping for milk, and then I came upon this milk, super milk, full cream, and I was excited because I remembered a couple of years back, Mr. Sidney Martin, who is a big business mogul in this country, mentioned that he wants to go into the milk producing business, and that's what he wants to start doing. He wants to start producing milk, and he's going to call it super milk. So I thought, no, this brand of milk belongs to him. It's coming from his farm. So I was, of course, okay, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to support him. But after I paid and I checked on the site, something pulled my attention, and it was this little flag over here. That's the flag of our neighboring country, Zimbabwe, previously known as Rhodesia, but modernly known today as Zimbabwe. It brought me to question. It brought me to question some things. I said this, and I looked at myself. I said, but Namibia, we produce milk. We have farm fresh milk. We have our brand of milk. Why are we importing milk from Zimbabwe? And why is it $2 or $3 cheaper than our local milk? What's going on? It brought me to sit down, and I sat down and I thought, I pondered with myself. I can say I wrestled with my with my thoughts a bit, because I started asking questions like, in a country where we are working towards Vision 2030, and our political leaders keep on saying that we should be a country that is self-sufficient, that can self-rely on its own, that can produce its own food that it eats, but yet we're still importing milk. And this import of such a brand of milk, which I, as an African, of course, support the African Union and also support the SADC Union by saying we need to encourage more trade amongst the African states, but importing things that we produce here, what that does, it ends up bringing unnecessary, in my opinion, competition to the local capacity, to the dairy farmers that are there. Nem Dairy spend millions upon millions of dollars to develop their dairy farm down south in this country. I know there are private milk farmers that also supply Nem Dairies with some milk. Now, when you're introducing this brand of milk from Zimbabwe and also some milk from South Africa, which is now the Parmalats, the Clovers, the Long Life, these brands end up creating one side we can say it's positive, one side we can say negative competition, because a company like Parmalat and Clover have been around for years, and these companies have made lots of money. So these companies today can afford to sell their milk at $2 cheaper than the local the local farm fresh milk, because farm fresh is just starting up, so it needs to build the capital and the resources to keep its business running. And because it needs to do this, companies like Parmalat and Clover, who have been around for years, have already built up those reserves. They can say, okay, farm fresh milk is $18. What we're gonna do, we're gonna make ours it's $18. We're gonna make ours $2 cheaper, and we're gonna make it $15 cheaper, which forces the local consumer at the retailer to not even think twice, but walk right past the farm fresh milk and buy the Parmalat or the Clover milk, or even buy the super milk from Zimbabwe, because it's cheaper compared to the milk that's produced locally. I sit down now, let's say, we talk a lot about being food, really focusing on food security and making sure that our food security is in top shape, and that we can be a country that eat what it produces. But how will we reach this level as long as we keep on importing things that we can locally produce here, such as milk and meat and chicken? Not so long ago, before we started producing Taste Good chicken, we had the competition with the South African brands of chicken. I see in certain retailers those South African brands of chicken you don't find, but I'm sure you can still find them in some shops, such as Rainbow Chicken. I remember when we started producing our chicken, Taste Good chicken, it was so expensive. We couldn't afford it. We had to buy Rainbow Chicken and farm fresh chicken, because those are big companies, and I said they have the reserves, so these companies can afford to sell their products at a cheaper price compared at the newcomers into the business. But it begs the question. I'm not saying that I do not want trade with our neighboring countries in the SADC or our neighboring countries in Africa. I am saying if we don't produce tiles here, we can import tiles from South Africa. If we don't produce the metallic cups that are used predominantly on farms and that are being produced in Zimbabwe, we can import those. But things that we produce here, fruits, food, meat, rice, barley, and hops, why should we still spend millions upon millions of dollars paying another country so it exports its things here and then sells it to our consumers? But yet we make romanticized statements such as buy Namibian, be Namibian, buy Namibian, support Namibian. How are we going to get people to support Namibian products when we continuously bring products such as these that we produce ourselves locally here? You know, you sit there and ask yourself that. Namibia we started producing, Nem Dairy started producing yogurt, but you still find South African yogurt products in our shelves. Yes, fine, maybe the consumers like them, but you still find this. You know, we plant grapes down south. We produce grapes in this country. We produce grapes in this country. You will not be shocked to go to certain shops and they're selling boxes of grapes, and those grapes are coming not even from Namibia, they're coming from the neighboring South Africa or Zimbabwe or Zambia. And we're sitting here and asking ourselves, when will we reach a point where we are very food secure? We won't reach that point where we are very food secure, because as long as we keep on importing, as long as we have these farmers that are trying to get into this businesses, such as being an apple producer, but you want to get in and start producing apples, you take your products to retailers such as Fruit and Veggie and ShopRite and Pick and Pay, and these characters tell you, look, gentlemen, we import our things from a supplier in South Africa, in Limpopo. He sends us about 1,000 tons of apples, and we just want to keep it going that way. It's very difficult for those local guys to develop that capacity. I think there also needs to be government will and government push, whereby the government of the day, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and the Ministry of Finance, and the Namibian chambers of commercialization and industrialization of Namibia, NCCI, needs to step in and say, look, gentlemen and gentle ladies, we are not stopping importing of products, foods, and goods from other countries. But things that we produce here locally in this country, such as meat, whether it's mutton, poultry, or beef, or even pork, we don't need to import that. If we have farmers that are producing apples and citric fruits, we don't need to import that. If we have farmers that are producing bananas, we don't need to import that. Import other things that we do not have here. That will make sense. If we aren't producing enough salmon, for example, which is a fish breed that you find in most parts of the US and other parts, but which is quite healthy, and the meat is quite healthy and low in fat. If we don't produce salmon in Namibia, let's import salmon. If we don't produce enough goat meat in Namibia, let's import goat meat. If we don't produce enough cheese and goat milk, let's import this. But as long as we are producing these things locally, we shouldn't import them. Because what we need to do is empower the local capacity. The local capacity needs to be empowered. We need to empower local capacity, that if a young person gets up today and says, you know what, I have an idea now and I start producing ice cream, they will be able to compete with Country Fresh and Rainbow ice cream, and what's the other one, Farmhouse ice cream. I'm going to create something that's 10 times better than theirs and 10 times healthier than theirs. We should sit down and go like, aha, this young man we should support, rather than going like, go ahead, but that you are producing is already being produced by South Africa, and retailers rather go buy it from South Africa because it's cheaper, rather than paying you, who will ask maybe $5 or $6 more. We should encourage the development of the local capacity. I am not saying let's stop countries from exporting their products to us, but I am saying before we start importing certain products, let's first sit down and say, can't we produce this locally? Isn't there a person who produces this locally? Oh, there's a dairy farmer. Oh, Namib Dairies is there, it's producing 80 tons of 80 liters of milk or more, 80, 100 or 1,000 liters of milk, you know, or more, or 100,000 liters of milk or more. let's empower them. Let's protect them. I always say subsidize the local products. I know I've seen the good and the bad of subsidizing. The good is it helps the local capacity grows and for us to have more local expertise. The bad side of it is what is happening in Korea, where companies like Samsung and Hyundai, Samsung and Hyundai are literally dominating the spheres and literally killing off other companies that want to come into the same type of business. They literally stop them from coming into it. That's what we don't need. But subsidize, encourage local capacity to grow, because when will we ever reach food security to a point that we do not even need to import carrots? You know, an interesting story was I went to a local retailer that was selling potatoes, and they had the Namibian flag, that buy Namibian, 100% Namibian, whatnot, banner hanging over these potatoes. And they removed them out of a packet, and they, rather than dispose of the packaging, they put the packaging underneath the table where the potatoes are. I happened to see this, and I saw where these potatoes are coming from. They were coming from Limpopo in South Africa. That's what some retailers do. I think some of these products, they say 100% Namibian, they may be lying. They're falsely advertising because they bought 100 tomatoes from South Africa and they need to sell them. I believe they're doing this. But it starts at government. Government needs to stop making statements and start pushing. It would be very nice the day you can go to a shop and you are still having the luxury of buying various different type of teas from various parts of the world, but there is Namibian brands of teas that are there that can compete with your red rose, you know, with your 5 red rose, or is it, yeah, 5 red rose, with your 5 roses, sorry, so, I don't know why I call it 5 red roses, but five roses, rooibos tea, Glen, and we get a uniquely Namibian made tea that is produced here on a tea farm here in Namibia, that we get honey that's produced here in Namibia, not coming from South Africa or Japan or England, even though we can still bring in those products, but we should give preferential treatment to our products first, empower the local products before we actually start looking at empowering the international ones. You know, I still feel like there is no need for this. We already have so much foreign milk in our market from the South Africans, from South Africa. Now we're bringing milk from Zimbabwe. What this does, it brings unnecessary competition to our local producers. You know, it can cause some local producers to go out of business, and that's not what we want. We want to see more of those local producers, the local farmers, still being very productive, still contributing to the economy of this country, because they live and breathe here. They pay the taxes here, and we need these guys to keep on producing milk rather than running and importing things from our neighboring countries. I am for importing goods and products from our neighboring sister and brother countries, but we should encourage our local individuals to be able to try and produce these things first locally before we run and go import. Because right now in Namibia we have this dependency syndrome that is actually alive and rampant in our nation, whereby we are so dependent on our neighboring country South Africa that one of our economists and even one of our ministers of finance, Mr. Kali Schledvan, once said that if South Africa sneezes, Namibia gets the cold. That is how much we're dependent on South Africa. We depend on South Africa on almost everything we have here in Namibia, and that is the problem. It will be very crazy the day that South Africa wakes up and says, either you guys pay us more money or we stop exporting anything. You will go to various shops here in Namibia and you see a lot of those shops, their shelves will be empty. And now we're also starting to create a new dependency syndrome by importing milk and other dairy products, and I'm sure this will be the first of many coming from our neighboring country, Zimbabwe, because we signed an agreement with them to import a lot of goods and fruits from their country, which I sat down and asked myself, don't we produce some of these fruits locally here? If we have started producing rice, that means that in the next 5 to 6 years, we will be limiting the imports of rice. We produce barley and hops here. We are trying to push into start producing 100% locally produced bananas here in this country. This is why we have the agricultural university working on these things. It's to limit this dependency theory which we have created. And I said it has to come from government, it has to come from the chambers of commerce, it also has to come from the businesses themselves, because I know some of these businesses will tell you, well, Mitchell, it's much more cheaper for me to import apples from South Africa than rather pay a local producer here. And this is why a lot of these local producers that have these ideas of starting up these businesses start them maybe 2-3 years have a good run, and then after that they withdraw. As I said with the yogurt situation, it's name dairies. I really take off my hat to name dairies and name mills, Namib Mills, and the brewery. They're really trying. They have been trying for such a long time, but I feel like this is also the space for other young entrepreneurs to come in and to assist these guys, because Nam Dairies has really been at the forefront of bringing more Namibian products, the milk, the yogurt. They've produced yogurts, Oshikandela, Shitaka, which I love so much. They're behind that. They need more local guys to come on board and bring more, so we can start limiting the imports of South Africa's drinking yogurt and all this type of things. Not saying that we want to cut South Africa completely off. We're saying that we want to be a nation whereby we can produce the basic things that we eat. The basic things like bread, rice, milk, meat, tea. These are basic things, and sugar. These are basic things that we should be able to produce for ourselves. We can't still be relying on importing from our neighboring countries. Because in today's economic climate and in today's political climate, anything can happen tomorrow. What if the UN imposes sanctions on us, or the AU imposes sanctions on us? We can't import or export our products. What happens? Do we run hungry? Do we starve an entire nation? Or rather, do we sit down and say, let us focus on trying to develop our local capacity? This is one part that I always argue with a lot of historian learned individuals on this. I always say, the sanctions that were imposed on South Africa in the 90s because of apartheid really helped South Africa to grow at the level that it is today. Because what that did, it encouraged the South African government, the racist apartheid government, to sit down and say, listen, we can't anymore be relying on imports from other countries because we're not allowed to import anything. So we should start empowering our local people to be able to produce everything we eat. It went as far as even producing the tools they use to build their houses. That really assisted them. We as a nation, as Namibia, do not need sanctions to be placed upon us. All we need is to start showing more of a willingness and more support to the local capacity. We need to develop our local capacity and help develop it, nurture it to the point that it grows, and still guide it to the point that it can one day become self-sufficient, whereby we would not really need to import milk from Zimbabwe, South Africa, Zambia or Angola or Congo, whereby we don't need to import anything. The only things we import from them are the things that we are unable to produce here. And like I've said, food things we should be able to import here. Things like tech, such as this smart watch that I have here, this Samsung S2 Gear. We can import this because we don't yet produce them. We can talk to Samsung to come open up a factory and teach our local people how to start making smart watches, so we can create a smart watch that's uniquely Namibian. These are the type of engagements that our leaders should be having with these people. And for me, those are things that we can import. But food stuff that we eat, we shouldn't be importing them. We should be encouraging our local farmers to be able to start producing these things in this country. That's my 2 cents, gents. Like and subscribe to my page, comment, and I'll always reply. I'm always looking for a good debate, and to have not really a debate, but to have a conversation on this topic. Give me your 2 cents on what you think we can do to help develop our local capacity in this country. Have a good night.